Hello, this is Bo, and today I'll be covering the upcoming Tier 10 Russian hybrid cruiser, the Komissar. The Komissar is the newest steel ship to be added to World of Warships starting in patch 13.4, and it will be available to all servers starting on May 16th. A little bit about the design of the Komissar. It represents the Soviet Project X large cruiser design in early 1935. While many innovative design features were proposed, ultimately the lack of funding and allocation of resources meant no ships would ever be built. Let's go over the build that'll be shown on the top right. The build is focused on survivability and into radio location. The radio location is used so that you're able to know what direction an enemy destroyer or submarine is at. Then you're able to launch your planes and use your planes to be able to spot the enemy destroyer or sub, so that you're able to then quickly use your attack to keep the enemy spotted, and then use your guns on the target, or you launch your aerial ASW on the enemy submarine. In modules, you're going to want to build into Hydro, the main guns, which include the range, so you're able to get your range to 20 kilometers, and into aircraft, so that they're a little bit more tanky and they go a little bit faster. Moving on to the armament of the ship, it has 12 240 millimeter guns that give you great forward firing angles, as well as great kiting angles as well. It does have an average DPM. If you want to compare it to another Russian cruiser on comparison, it's pretty on par with the Moskva DPM. So if you want to compare it to that, that's a great comparison for the Komissar. You do get excellent AP shell performance on this ship. It can citadel BBs under 8 kilometers like the Montana and the Conqueror if they're broadside, and cruisers at any range. So make sure that you're not afraid to use AP on this ship if you do plan on getting her. Though she will overpin light cruisers at close range if you're not careful. So make sure you aim really low in that water line and make sure that you do not suffer too many overpins on those light cruisers. This ship comes with insane shell speed that is on par with the Nevesky, which is one of the top kiting farming cruisers in the game, and is slightly behind the Moskva, which means this ship will be pretty easy to aim at long distances. One of the only two downsides of the ship is the fact that it has a slow reload of 15 seconds and has a gun range of 17.4 kilometers, which will feel pretty uncomfortable at times due to her squishiness, which is why I recommend building into range so you can get that sweet spot of 20 kilometers for the guns. I think it's time we cover the main gimmick of the Komissar, which is the planes, the airstrike of this thing. Now, you want to think of these planes as the Nakhimov rocket planes, where it takes 2 minutes for them to recharge. They have 24 rockets per drop with 6 planes in the charge, and you only get 1 charge at a time. So pretty much as soon as you get a charge, you want to use it so you can get another one recharging while you're flying that one around. Now these planes are pretty quick. Off the bat, you get the rocket booster off the plane, so they're able to go almost 300 knots right off the bat for a little bit, not for super long. So you want to use that speed to get to wherever you're trying to attack it quickly as possible. Without those rockets, they have a normal speed of 168 knots, which when you're boosting, it goes up to about 218 knots, which is really fast for a hybrid cruiser's airstrike. These rockets have about the same firing delay as the Nakhimov, which is around 5 to 6 seconds. So make sure you lead for that. Now, when you're aiming these, you want to aim at the center of the crosshair and a little bit above. That's where normally the rockets are going to hit, is at the crosshair and a little bit above the crosshair. But you do get a lot of damage and pen with these rockets. They have 41 millimeters of armor penetration, which is really good for a hybrid cruiser's airstrikes. It's definitely best versus battleships and large cruisers, but you can still hit destroyers. It's just going to be really rough to hit them, and you're definitely not going to do as much damage to a destroyer as you would as a battleship or a large cruiser. One thing to remember is that when you're flying these planes, your ship is still vulnerable to any being hit or any strikes or anything like that. So make sure you recall or strike something as soon as possible if there is a threat to your ship. Also, if you are flying around, you can click the M key to be able to pull up the map and click anywhere on the map to get your ship going to wherever you want to get your ship starting to go while you're flying around. The Komissar does come with 10-kilometer range torpedoes with 15k damage each with 76 reload for these torpedoes. There is 3 torpedoes per side of a total of 6. With there being a 10-kilometer range of these torps, it's only going to be really useful for close range rushing, or if you're able to kite away from the enemy and they kind of run into your torps as you're kiting. A lot of the time though, you're going to be dying while using these torpedoes, so make sure you don't forget that these things do exist and you can use those torpedoes. For the anti-air, you have quote-unquote good anti-air. It's pretty much all in her short-range anti-air guns, which unfortunately is only going to really work against dive bombers and nothing else, unfortunately. So if you're dealing with a Nakamov or anything with longer range strikes, yeah, good luck with that. A good thing to note, you do get aerial ASW on the Komissar, which is really nice. You do get the typical 8-kilometer range. Now, you do still have to get uncomfortably close to submarines to use it, but at least it's not surface-based ASW. At least it's not that. For the maneuverability, it's a pretty fast base speed for how long this ship is. You have a 35.5 knot top speed, which is very fast. It's only behind the speed boost cruisers of tier 10. It's very fast for its tier. Now for its turning radius, as you can tell from how long this thing is, yeah, no, this thing doesn't have a turning radius. This thing has to turn around a whole mountain to be able to turn. This thing's turning radius is massive. So pretty much with this thing, it's good if you're going in a straight line. If you're trying to turn, it's going to take you a while, so definitely be prepared for how long this thing takes to turn. For the hull and survivability, you have a HP pool of 43,800. Of course, you're going to want to build into that, so it goes to about 47,000. This level of HP is pretty much light cruiser levels of HP, so definitely be note of that whenever you are playing this thing. You do have a 30mm deck armor, which can bounce 406mm guns. It does have a 25mm bow/stern armor with an elongated bow/stern, which makes them vulnerable to damage. You also have an above water citadel with 115mm side armor, which means that you're going to be very vulnerable to citadel hits. So please do not just rush this thing in. You want to normally stay at a kiting distance far away, unless you're going to be overly confident and make use of those great guns. Then you can kind of push, bow in, use those gun angles to your advantage to get a lot of damage off. Now, with this ship being a not very tanky ship and pretty fragile, you need to definitely be careful when launching planes, as you may not have a ship to return to if you misposition your ship. So always be aware of your surroundings and what ships can citadel you and not citadel you. For this ship's concealment, it has a best surface concealment of 11.5 kilometers, which is really respectable for a tier 10 cruiser. With the ship of this size, 11.5 kilometer surface concealment is amazing. You can really use that concealment to sneak up on a cruiser, or to be able to kind of move along the flanks to get yourself in a nice position to get some broadside shots with the AP, or to be able to sneak around and get torps off, or to be able to launch your planes and just have a fun time doing that. The aerial detection though is 8.5 kilometers though, which is really bad for a cruiser. So you get great surface detection, but terrible aerial detection. So if you're in a match with the aircraft carrier or other hybrids, definitely be a little bit on the more passive side just to be safe. Now, the final things to talk about the stats wise for the ship is the consumables. You do get a normal cruiser DCP, which lasts about 5 seconds and has a long reload time just like everything else, but you do get an extra heal on this ship. It also has an improved heal as well. So instead of healing the typical 50% standard damage, it heals 60% of the standard damage, and it heals 50% of Citadel damage instead of the typical 33% Citadel damage. So you get a better heal on this ship, a standard DCP, and you get either a choice between Hydro or DFAA, and of course you're building into Hydro, so there's no need to go into DFAA on this ship. From all this, the Komissar is pretty much a Russian heavy cruiser that trades armor for player-controlled rocket planes. These planes are very similar to Nakhimov rocket planes, but with slightly less firepower. While they can spot DDs, they are definitely most effective against battleships and slow-moving cruisers. Because again, your ship is very fragile, so you only want to use these planes when you're dark or about to go dark, and then use them to finish off ships or to be able to light fires. Otherwise, you want to play the ship more like a typical kiting heavy cruiser, but with the armor of a light cruiser. Kind of like the Zao or the Hindenburg, you're either going to be going the 1 or the 10 line, being passive in the beginning to get either fires going from distance or trying to get AP salvos into unexpected cruisers or battleships. Pretty much you want to be very careful, as one battleship salvo can pretty much death strike you, which I've had a few instances of that happening when I wasn't too careful. I was cutting away and he got the Citadel right up my bum, and I was out of the match. So most of the time, you want to stay at longer ranges where you get a lot more time to react to incoming attacks. You definitely want to make use of your AP, which is very strong. So definitely use that whenever enemy battleships or cruisers show their broadsides, because you can even Citadel battleships under 8 kilometers. Though, if you're in such a position, you will probably die first. So definitely use that as more of like a last resort information. But if a battleship is that close, you're able to Citadel it, you can do a lot of damage to them. And make sure you use your torpedoes as well in that instance. Otherwise, you want to play the ship more like a typical kiting heavy cruiser, but with the armor of a light cruiser. Kind of like the Zao or the Hindenburg, you're either going to be going the 1 or the 10 line, being passive in the beginning to get either fires going from distance or trying to get AP salvos into unexpected cruisers or battleships. Pretty much you want to be very careful, as one battleship salvo can pretty much death strike you, which I've had a few instances of that happening when I wasn't too careful. I was cutting away and he got the Citadel right up my bum, and I was out of the match. So most of the time, you want to stay at longer ranges where you get a lot more time to react to incoming attacks. You definitely want to make use of your AP, which is very strong. So definitely use that whenever enemy battleships or cruisers show their broadsides, because you can even Citadel battleships under 8 kilometers. Though, if you're in such a position, you'll probably die first. So definitely use that as more of like a last resort information. But if a battleship is that close, you're able to Citadel it, you can do a lot of damage to them. And make sure you use your torpedoes as well in that instance. Now, with the overall review out of the way, let's talk about how you're able to get this ship. Now, starting in patch 13.4, which would be around May 16th for both servers, the Komissar will be bundled with a steel camo for 35k steel, which is a saving of about 3k steel if you plan to buy them separately. Now, keep in mind, you cannot apply a coupon to this bundle. If you're only wanting to get the Komissar itself, then it'll be available for 30k steel starting in patch 13.5. So in that case, you can use the steel coupon then. So if you're wanting to get this just a ship, you'll be able to get that in 13.5, which will be in June. But if you want to get the bundle, which will cost about 5k more with the bundle, which is 35k, then you can do that as well starting in this patch of May 16th. But otherwise, normally I would say just save your steel and wait until it comes out then. If you're not having a very high income of steel, then do it that way. Or if you have a lot of steel lying around, then just get the ship. It's up to you. I know a lot of people right now are trying to figure out what steel ship to get. I would definitely recommend the Komissar for people that like to have a more challenging gameplay. Like, this ship is definitely a very high skill level ship. If you're able to make utility of both the planes and the aircraft, sorry, the planes and the guns, you'll do an amazing job with this ship and have a great time overall. Now, that's going to be it. If you guys have any questions or concerns, definitely let me know in the comments down below. And make sure to type Russian biased in the comments if you enjoyed this video. But this is Bo, and thank y'all for watching.